Hello everyone and welcome back to Mariana Mas Books. My name is Mariana and today I am here with the wrap up for the February Friendship Book Swap. I think I wrote the name and I always forget it because it's so long. If you watched my video for the Friendship February Book Swap, it is a project that I did with my friend Cara from Wild Book Garden, where we chose a topic that we both like in books, which is good friendships, and we each recommended each other a book that features a great friendship that we thought the other would enjoy. At the beginning of the month, I shared with you a video where I read her email to tell you guys what I was going to read. In her channel, she did a video where she read my email where I told her what she was going to be reading. If you watched that video, you have seen that she recommended to me Nettle and Bone by Kingfisher, which is a book that I was super excited to read because I always heard great things about it. Most of the booktubers that I follow love that book. A lot of the booktubers where I coincide with their tastes love that book, and the premise sounded right up my alley, so I was very excited to read it, and I recommended her The Curse of Chalion by Lois McMaster Bujold, which is one of my favorite fantasy books, and I just thought that Cara would adore it. As I told you, the topic that we were looking for were great friendships, and so I recommended The Curse of Chalion for a very amazing female friendship that is featured in the book. In general, it was, I consider, a super successful project just because I ended up reading 3 books, or rather 2 books and 1 I DNF'd. So before I tell you my thoughts, I just wanted to say that I think it was a success as a project, even though, as you have probably guessed from what I said, I didn't end up loving Nettle and Bone, which was a bummer for me. I'm not going to lie to you, it was a bummer. Because this is a wrap-up video, I want to wrap up all 3 books. So I'm going to start talking very briefly about The Curse of Chalion. And I say very briefly because I talked a lot about it last year in my channel. So I ended up rereading The Curse of Chalion because when the month started and I did my video where I talked about the book that Cara recommended, where I read the email. In her email, she told me that she considered the page count, and Nettle and Bone is a very short book, and so that's one of the reasons why she recommended it to me. And I didn't consider page count, and I recommended her a very long book. I think it's over 400 pages, and I felt really bad about it. So I started reading it just because I wanted to double check. I wanted to double check that it was a good recommendation for Cara, because if not, I was going to let her off the hook. And so I started reading it in audiobook, because actually when last year I started reading it on my Kindle and then I finished in audiobook, and I adored the audiobook. I adore the voice for Casaril. So this time I was like, I'm going to start with audiobook. So I started and I ended up finishing it because once I started I couldn't stop. I really love that book. I talked about it extensively in my channel before. I'm going to try to link some videos where I talk about it, but basically this is a medieval fantasy with great theology, great in-world religion. It's one of my favorite in-world religions, and great subtle feminist content. I talked about it in my videos last year about what I mean when I say that it's subtly feminist. To sum up, what I mean is that it is a world where patriarchy exists, and then slowly, through Isel, gender equality is being talked about, but not in a very direct way, in a very subtle way where it makes sense, that it makes you go, oh, huh, that makes sense. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it is done through the curiosity of the characters. Isel is a character that believes the world works in the way that it works. She is aware that to wield her power as a princess, let's say, she needs to marry a prince, and she needs to marry a convenient prince. She is aware of all that, and she knows that that is how the world works, but through her curiosity, she starts to genuinely question, wait, why does the world work how it works, and could it work differently? And ultimately, there are some things that change and there are some things that don't. And I won't go into details so as not to spoil, but I just love that approach. I'm not going to say more because I don't want to make this video super long. So now I'm going to talk about Nettle and Bone, which is a fairy tale-esque fantasy. It's like cozy, whimsical, dark in a fairy tale style. That's how I would describe it. I feel like if you know my reading tastes, you would think it would be a book for me, and I would think so. So just for the record, I think Cara chose really well because on paper it sounds exactly like the type of book I would like, and I'm bummed out that it didn't turn out to be that way. There are some times that happens when a book on paper, that the blurb sounds exactly for you, and then when you read it, it's not. So we are following Mara, who is a princess of a kingdom. The world is not super well defined. There are kings, there are queens, there are kingdoms. Mara is the youngest of three sisters, so she is sent to be a nun because her older sister is married. She is married to a prince, but then she dies. This is very early in the book, so this is not a spoiler. The big sister dies, and so then the next sister is married off to the same prince. Mara realizes that the prince that her sister is married to is violent with her. He is abusive, and so Mara decides that she is going to kill the prince to free her sister. That is the story. That's the story that we are following. The main problem for me personally was that I didn't like Mara as a character. And I don't mean that she's an unlikable protagonist. I mean that I didn't like her as a character, but I also didn't find her interesting. It was a combination of both. She comes across as very naive. She's supposed to be 30, but she sounds way younger, way younger. And so once you learn that she is 30 and you read the things that she thinks and that she thinks, you think, okay, so this is not a child, this is just a very naive woman. And because she's a princess, she comes across, for me personally, this is a very loved book, so like my opinion is the minority here. But for me, she came across as a bit privileged, disconnected from the real world. She's always surprised about the hardships of the world, and that started to rub me the wrong way when she leaves her convent and she starts seeing the real world, including the violence that her sister lives through. She's always super shocked. She cannot believe that bad things happen in the world. I don't know if that was meant to be commentary, in like we should be shocked about the things that happen in the world, which I think would be a good commentary if it was done differently, because again, for me, what it started sounding like was a princess who lives sheltered and has no idea of the hardships that real people that are not princesses live. So that rubbed me the wrong way. To me, it just sounded like, oh, I'm a princess living in my convent, and I never had the wish to know how my people live. That's how it sounded to me, and I don't think it was the intention, but that's how it sounded to me. So I couldn't get on board with her, and because I couldn't get on board with her, I didn't really care about her mission and about what she was doing. There are a lot of things about the world and about the whimsical nature of the world that I really did like. There is a scene in a goblin market. I think the goblin market concept was really cool. The fairy godmother is a character that I really liked. I actually have something to say about her, but I'm going to continue saying the positive things. There is a friendship that eventually develops between the fairy godmother and another character that I really, really loved, and I loved that ending. So there are a lot of things that I loved. But because the protagonist was my problem, then it was hard to get into the story. Luckily, there is a heavy romance element in the book. At I think it's about 40%, we meet a guy who is very obviously going to be the love interest for the romance portion of the book. It's interesting because the first half reads as this is Mara's story, but the second half reads as this is a romance book and we are continuing Mara's story, because the Kingfisher does this thing where she wants to have non-traditional romance, but at the same time she incorporates very traditional tropes, like the guy is super big, the woman is super dainty, he has super big hands, she has super small hands, he has rock hard muscles, there is only one bed, that type of trope. So in that sense it feels like a very traditional romance, and luckily for me that element was added into the story because I love romance in books, and I feel like if I didn't have the romance I would have struggled more to get more into the book. It's not my favorite romance that I've ever read, but the romance did sustain me for the second half of the book because I actually really liked him, Fenris. I don't think it's a spoiler because it's pretty obvious since the beginning that it's going to be a romance with him. So, Fenris I really liked as a character, and so it wasn't my favorite romance because I didn't like Mara, but I did like Fenris, and so I liked reading about him, and I liked his character and his personality, so that was fun to read. And then I'm just going to talk about just one thing, because I do think it's strange and I don't understand it, and I don't know if anyone has read this book. I would love to hear your take in the comments because I don't understand it. Before I say it, I don't think it's a spoiler for the story, but if you want to read this book and you don't want to learn anything, then skip to the timestamp where I will talk about the other book, because I will mention some details about the fairy godmother, which I don't think spoil the story. But if you don't want to hear anything, sometimes I'm like that, then skip. I always do that. When it's a book I want to read, I skip when people talk about it. So even if it's not spoilers. So I'm giving you the warning. Anyway, the fairy godmother. Mara hates her fairy godmother because she thinks the fairy godmother is completely useless. She complains about her all the time, and the reason why she considers her useless is because the gift that she bestowed upon her and her sisters, and that she bestows upon all of her children, is good health. And I'm sitting here reading the book, waiting for an explanation as to why she is useless, because from where I'm sitting, good health is not something that everyone enjoys. I think it's a good gift if you have a godmother that is magical and she wants to bestow upon you good health. I think it's a good gift. If Mara doesn't want it, I will take it. Thank you. It just because I already read her as this disconnected from reality, naive, kind of privileged princess that doesn't realize that some people struggle in life. When she complains about the super lame gift that is health, I was like, I mean, you're not helping yourself to make me like you. And I'm just confused as to why we are supposed to go along with it, because it's not like she said that and then another character says, "Oh, Mara, but like good health is a good blessing to bestow upon a child. Some people don't have the means to have good health or good healers or sorcerers or whatever you have in the world. And so maybe for some people that gift is a great gift to receive." No one tells her that. Every character goes along with the fact that, oh yeah, that's a super lame gift. Like health, pff, who wants health? We are supposed to get on board with that idea. I want to hear in the comments what you thought about it if you read the book, because I am confused as to why T. Kingfisher, if she wanted to write about a useless fairy godmother, why she decided I can't think of the writing process where you are thinking, I want to write a fairy godmother that is useless and can only give one gift, which as a concept I think is hilarious. I think it's a good concept. It's a good whimsical concept. But if you're writing that character, I don't understand how you come up with, oh, I know, health. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. And I need someone to help me in the comments, because why is health supposed to be a bad gift? Anyway, I don't want to keep talking about it because it's such a small thing in the book, but it just confused me a lot. It confused me a lot. Anyway, what I learned, moving on to what I learned, I realized that whimsy is very much like humor. You know how there are some books that or authors that you think are hilarious and you show them to someone and they don't think it's funny. Humor is a very particular personal thing. And I realized that whimsy is the same. What someone will find whimsical and charming, someone will find nonsensical, because the very nature of whimsy is very nonsensical. You are adding elements to your story that have no purpose other than being whimsical. Last year I read The Undertaking of Hart and Mercy, which is a whimsical romance book. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars and I thought the whimsy in that book was super charming. I have read reviews where people are like, what is this nonsensical randomness? I found it super charming. Someone else found it nonsensical. Whimsy is nonsensical. That's what it's supposed to be. If it is your kind of whimsy, you will find it charming, but if it's not, you will just find it nonsensical and random and you will think, why is this here? So I realized that whimsical books probably are going to be divisive, in that what is going to be whimsical for someone is not going to work for someone else. And so I realized that with whimsical books, there is a chance that the blurb sounds like it's just for me, but if it's not my type of whimsy, I won't like it, even if on paper it sounds like I would. So that is something that I learned about whimsical fantasy that I think is interesting. And then to wrap up this video, I am just going to quickly talk about the book I DNF'd, and that is Swordheart by T. Kingfisher. After I finished Nettle and Bone, I wanted to see if the Kingfisher was for me. I had read a book by her, Paladin's Grace, which I finished but I thought was okay. But that one turned out to be a murder mystery. I didn't know there was going to be a murder mystery plot. And if you watched my Things That Bore Me video, you know that mystery bores me. And specifically, murder mystery. Who done it really bores me. I don't care who done it. So when I read Paladin's Grace and it turned out to be a murder mystery, I thought that that is why I didn't like it as much. Not because of the book or the author, but because of the mystery. But then after I didn't like Nettle and Bone, I thought, wait, did I dislike that book because it was a murder mystery or because I just think Kingfisher is not for me? So I decided to try out another Kingfisher that was very high on my list of books that I wanted to read, which is Swordheart. That one is a romance. The romance is the main part of the story. I read a blurb and I was like, this is so for me. It is a story about a woman who inherits everything from her uncle, but she has problems because other relatives want to take what she has. They want her to marry someone so that they can also enjoy that inheritance, and she doesn't want to marry that someone. I'm not going to go into the details of what goes on, but she also inherits a sword. There is an enchanted sword. The sword has a warrior in it. When she unsheaths the sword, a warrior comes out, and it is a warrior that is thousands of years old, that lives in that sword, and that warrior is sworn to the person who wields the sword. It is a romance between her and the sword warrior. It just sounded so hilarious and cute and funny and whimsical, and I thought this is going to be right up my alley. I started reading it in audiobook. I think I had read like 1 hour and a half, loving the book, loving it, laughing out loud. I thought, okay, yeah, then it's not that Kingfisher is not for me. I just have to find the right book. And then I DNF'd it. So here's what I wrote in my Goodreads review. I think this would have been a fantastic novella or even short story, novelette, I don't know, the length, a short book. But this is over 400 pages long. 400 pages long is too long for a story that has such low stakes. And as I talked about it previously, the way I measure stakes is when I care about the characters, when I care about what they're doing. If I don't care about what they're doing, I think it's low stakes. And in this case, I didn't particularly care about anything other than the romance. And there was other stuff going on with her that I didn't care about. I realized that I don't know if every protagonist by T. Kingfisher is the same, but this protagonist is 36 and she's also super naive. So there's that, but I don't know if that's how every T. Kingfisher protagonist is. I just cared about the romance. I didn't care about everything else. So it got to the point where I started speeding the book. And if you know me, you know that I don't speed audiobooks. I don't like it. And for me, speeding an audiobook means I'm bored. I just want to get this moving along. I just want to see what happens. It's like skimming for me. So I was like, okay, 1.25. Okay, 1.5. Okay, 1.75. I was at the point where I was at 2 speed, and I had 4 more hours to go. And I literally went into my app to check if I could speed it up a little more. At that point, when I saw, I realized, and I was like, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I looking for a way to speed it even more? I'm just not enjoying it. I'm going to DNF it. And so I DNF'd it. So I think that I can conclude that the Kingfisher is not for me, which is sad because I thought she would be. As I said, a lot of people that I see, that I watch on BookTube, that I share opinions with, that I love their channels, that I respect their opinions, love the Kingfisher, including Cara. And she thought I would love her, and I thought it too. So that I'm bummed about that, and I feel bad. I feel bad that I didn't like it, but I didn't like it. So it was a successful project in that I ended up reading 2.5 books, and in that I learned something about the type of books that I like, and in that I discovered that an author is not for me, and I am not going to try anymore. I'm bummed that I didn't like the books. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I feel so bad. I feel so bad. So yeah, that would be the wrap up for this project. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. But yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I will see you in another bookish video soon, and in the meantime, I wish you happy reading.